The camera flash was already halfway charged when my wife curled her lip and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Can you get out of the shot? You're throwing off the whole vibe with your face." She didn't laugh, no playful wink, no just kidding, just pure, unfiltered contempt dripping from every syllable. So I did exactly what she asked. I stepped out of the frame, and then I just kept walking. I moved past the group, past the bar, past the carefully staged balloon arch and the $200 flower arrangements she'd obsessed over for weeks. I walked straight through the rooftop restaurant, into the elevator, out to the parking garage, into my car, and drove away without a single word or backward glance. Hours later, one of her friends texted me. "She's still a mess. She won't stop crying, says she didn't mean it like that." What my wife didn't know, and what absolutely no one at that party suspected, was that I had been quietly planning my exit for months. And what happened after that rooftop incident would completely shatter the perfect little world she thought she'd built. My name is Carter Reynolds. I'm 41 years old. Up until about 8 months ago, I would have told you I had a solid marriage. Not some fairy tale romance with grand gestures and passionate declarations, but stable and functional. The kind of relationship you stop questioning because life gets busy and you assume silence means everything's fine. I own a commercial real estate firm in Denver. It's demanding work with long hours, constant phone calls, deals that collapse at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night and need resurrection by 7 the next morning. My brain is perpetually split between leases, tenants, and square footage calculations. My wife, Vanessa, is 38. She works as a creative director at a boutique marketing agency, and she lives entirely for optics. She's always been fixated on how everything appears to the outside world: the house, the clothes, the cars, the vacations, and above all, how we looked online. Our actual happiness was always secondary to the carefully curated image of happiness. We'd been married 13 years. No children, by design. Vanessa had been crystal clear from the beginning that kids would derail her career and her lifestyle. I didn't argue. I'd watched too many friends stay trapped in soul-crushing relationships for the sake of their children, only to end up as strangers sharing the same address. At least without kids, I figured, we'd both have a clean exit if things ever got truly bad. I just never imagined that truly bad would look like my own wife publicly humiliating me at her birthday party. The party was at Nala, one of those trendy rooftop venues downtown where the cocktails run $18 and the food is designed more for photographs than satisfaction. Walls of living greenery, neon signs with inspirational quotes, artisanal ice cubes shaped like geometric crystals, everything engineered specifically for social media consumption. Vanessa had been planning her birthday celebration for weeks like it was a major product launch. Curated guest list with strategic invitations, mood board-worthy decorations in her signature color palette, and a hand-picked playlist that reflected her personal brand. And a hired photographer whose entire purpose was capturing supposedly spontaneous moments that she'd already choreographed in her head. I'd tried to be involved in the planning. "Want me to handle the reservation, the cake, send out the invites?" I'd offered. She barely glanced up from her laptop. "Just show up on time and don't make it weird. I don't want to be worrying about managing you." That should have registered as a massive warning sign. Instead, I shrugged it off as stress. You'll notice a pattern here. I made excuses for a lot of things I shouldn't have. The party started at 7. I arrived at 6:45, wearing the navy suit she'd demanded. She'd made me try on 4 different options the week before, critiquing every detail with the cold precision of someone casting a stranger for a commercial rather than helping her husband get dressed for her celebration. When I walked onto the rooftop, she didn't rush over to greet me. She didn't smile or even pretend to be happy I'd arrived. She was completely absorbed with the photographer, a 20-something kid named Trevor who kept calling her V like they'd been close friends for years instead of professional acquaintances. She'd positioned herself near the railing where the city skyline created a cinematic backdrop. Golden hour sunlight, a burgundy dress that photographed beautifully, perfect angles calculated to the degree. It was abundantly clear who the star of this evening was supposed to be. "Oh, hey, you made it," she said when she finally acknowledged my presence. Zero warmth in her voice. "Try to mingle with people, okay? Don't just stand around in the corner looking uncomfortable like you did last time." I grabbed a drink and did what I always did at her events. I floated from cluster to cluster, making polite conversations with people who barely registered my existence. Most of them were her coworkers, her industry contacts, her social circle. To them, I was simply part of the scenery, high-end, unobtrusive, vaguely necessary for the married woman aesthetic, but certainly not something they'd come here to interact with. Her best friend, Lauren, eventually drifted over and gave me that soft, sympathetic smile I'd grown to recognize over the years. "How are you holding up?" she asked quietly, like she was checking on someone recovering from surgery. "I'm fine," I lied smoothly, just staying out of trouble and letting Vanessa have her moment. The look she gave me suggested she knew that wasn't the complete truth. But before she could probe deeper, Vanessa's voice sliced through the ambient music and conversation like a blade. "Okay, everyone, group picture time," she announced, clapping her hands imperiously. "Gather round before we lose the light." People shuffled dutifully toward her designated spot. I walked toward the group out of habit, angling myself to the side like I'd learned over the years. Vanessa had unwritten rules about photographs. She occupied the center, commanding attention. I existed somewhere in the periphery, visible proof that she was married but never competing for focus. Apparently, that night, even my background presence was too much for her vision. "Carter, what are you doing?" she snapped, annoyance already sharpening her tone. I blinked in confusion, getting in the photo with everyone else. She didn't bother lowering her voice. "No, step out, you're throwing off the whole aesthetic." "Your face is ruining my picture," that's what she meant, and every single person there heard it. The conversations around us died mid-sentence. People froze with drinks halfway to their lips, laughter strangled in their throats. Trevor slowly lowered his camera, looking desperately like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. I stood there for what felt like an eternity staring at her. 13 years of marriage distilled into one venomous sentence delivered in front of everyone we knew. And then something inside me simply went quiet. I didn't explode with anger. I didn't argue or demand an apology. I didn't even feel the expected wave of sadness or humiliation. It was like someone had finally flipped on a light switch in a room I'd been stumbling through blindly for years. Everything became brutally, perfectly clear in that single moment. I stepped aside as requested, but instead of stopping a few feet away like a well-trained prop husband, I turned and walked directly away from the group, away from the gathering, away from the entire carefully curated life she'd been constructing for public consumption. By the time I reached the parking garage, my phone was vibrating continuously. Calls, texts, Vanessa, Lauren, numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored every single notification, flipped my phone face down on the desk, and returned my attention to the glittering city skyline. Because here's what no one at that party understood. That scene on the rooftop wasn't the beginning of the end. It was simply the final confirmation of everything I'd already discovered. I had been planning my departure for 8 months, and it all started the night I realized Vanessa's obsession with appearances extended far beyond Instagram filters and party decorations. I was supposed to be in Phoenix overnight. A significant client meeting had been scheduled for Friday morning, so I flew out Thursday afternoon as planned. But circumstances shifted unexpectedly. The client had a family emergency and canceled, so instead of staying at the hotel, I caught an earlier flight home. By 8 that evening, I was rolling my suitcase up our driveway, looking forward to a quiet night. Vanessa's car sat in the garage, but the house was completely dark. No TV glow, no music playing, no light spilling from the kitchen windows. Unusual, but not alarming. When work stressed her out, she sometimes retreated to our master bedroom with blackout curtains drawn and noise-canceling headphones blocking the world. But when I walked into our master bedroom, the bed was immaculately made, empty, untouched. Then I heard the faint clicking of a keyboard from down the hallway. From my personal office. I stopped in the doorway, processing what I was seeing. Vanessa was sitting in my chair, bathed in the blue glow of my computer monitor, clicking methodically through my files like she owned every document on the system. "What exactly are you doing?" I asked. She nearly launched out of the chair, hand flying dramatically to her chest. "Jesus, Carter, you nearly gave me a heart attack. I thought you were in Arizona." I was. Flight changed when the meeting canceled. I nodded toward the glowing screen. "When exactly did you get back?" "About 90 seconds before I found you here." I sat down.
You have almost $400,000 sitting in there, Carter. She emphasized each word like individual accusations. 400,000. And you just never thought to mention that to your wife? 20 years of disciplined saving, bonuses reinvested rather than spent, side deals and smart investments accumulated over time. My rainy day fund, my emergency parachute, my safety net that had nothing to do with her. "Is that what this is really about?" I asked. "You want access to my personal savings?" "We're married," she snapped, as if that explained everything. "What's yours is mine. That's how marriage works." "We also have a prenuptial agreement," I reminded her calmly, "with very explicit language about separate property remaining separate. You were actually the one who insisted on including that provision, if memory serves." She crossed her arms defensively, chin lifting with familiar stubbornness. "That was 13 years ago. Circumstances have changed since then." "What circumstances exactly?" She took a measured breath, like she was about to unveil a business proposal she'd been rehearsing. "I'm thinking seriously about launching my own agency. I'm tired of making other people wealthy while I collect a salary, but I need significant capital if I want to compete with the established firms in this market." "And you came in here," I said, the pieces clicking together, "to quietly evaluate my finances before asking, or more likely demanding, that I bankroll your venture?" "How much capital," I continued, "were you imagining you'd need?" Her answer came without hesitation. "All of it. I need to launch strong, or not at all." I couldn't help the laugh that escaped me. Not because anything was genuinely funny, but because the sheer audacity was so disconnected from reality that it stunned me. "You're asking me to completely drain an account I've been building for 2 decades so you can gamble on a startup?" I shook my head in disbelief. "I think it's great that you want to build something of your own. I genuinely support that ambition, but I'm not your investor, and I'm definitely not your personal ATM." Her eyes went cold and flat, the way they always did when she didn't get what she wanted. "Fine, then I'll find another way to make it happen." She walked out without another word, heels clicking sharply down the hallway, leaving me alone with my computer screen and a heavy, unsettled feeling spreading through my chest. That was the night I stopped sleepwalking through my marriage and started actually paying attention to what was happening right in front of me. Over the following weeks, small details began standing out. Things I'd previously dismissed or rationalized suddenly formed a troubling pattern. Her phone was perpetually face down now. She'd added new passwords to devices that used to sit unlocked on the kitchen counter. She suddenly had late meetings 3 or 4 nights every week, returning home well after 10 smelling faintly of expensive wine and unfamiliar cologne, complaining vaguely about demanding clients and difficult projects. It wasn't one dramatic revelation, it was a constellation of small changes that painted an unmistakable picture. The confirmation came from someone I trusted implicitly, my business partner, Nathan. He walked into my office one afternoon wearing an expression I'd learned to recognize over our years of partnership, the look of someone carrying information they wished they didn't have. "Got a few minutes?" he asked, closing the door behind him without waiting for an answer. "Of course. What's going on?" He settled into the chair across from my desk, clearly uncomfortable with whatever he was about to say. I've been debating for days whether to bring this up, but I kept thinking if our positions were reversed, I'd want to know the truth. So here it is. My stomach tightened instinctively. Okay. I saw Vanessa last Tuesday night at Merchants. Merchants is one of those upscale establishments in lower downtown. Intimate lighting, exceptional wine list, private booths designed for confidential conversations. The kind of place you'd choose for sensitive business dinners or romantic encounters you'd prefer to keep discreet. Who was she with? I asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be a colleague. Nathan pulled out his phone, swiped through his photos, and handed the device across the desk to me. There on the screen was my wife, seated in a secluded corner booth across from a man I'd never seen before. Mid-40s, impeccably tailored suit, statement watch that probably cost more than most cars. He possessed that relaxed confidence that substantial wealth gives certain people. They weren't kissing or holding hands, but every detail of their body language radiated intimacy. Leaning towards each other, completely focused on their private conversation, oblivious to the restaurant around them. Her hand resting on the table, almost but not quite touching his. "Do you recognize him?" Nathan asked quietly. "No," I admitted, jaw tight. "Should I?" "That's Blake Morrison," Nathan said, CEO of Blake Digital, one of the largest marketing firms in the city, maybe the largest. And just like that, every disconnected piece suddenly assembled itself into a coherent picture. Her sudden hunger for startup capital, the increasingly frequent late nights, the new passwords and secretive behavior, the obsessive focus on image and status. She wasn't just fantasizing about building something of her own. She was orchestrating an upgrade, trading up to a man who already possessed the money, power, and prestige she craved. "Thank you for telling me," I said quietly, handing Nathan his phone back. "I know that wasn't easy." After he left my office, I sat motionless for a long time, staring at the cityscape through my windows while reality recalibrated itself around me. Then I did something that probably saved me years of legal and emotional devastation. I stopped operating on assumptions and started documenting facts. I called an attorney I trusted and asked for a referral to someone who handled delicate domestic situations. He gave me the name of a private investigator named Rachel Torres. She specialized in marital cases, maintained an excellent success rate, and was known for absolute discretion. Rachel didn't waste time with unnecessary questions or false sympathy. Within 2 weeks, she delivered a meticulously organized folder to my desk, along with a password-protected flash drive containing digital copies of everything. Photographs of Vanessa and Blake at various hotels around the city, at intimate restaurants far from our usual circles, entering and leaving his downtown loft at telling hours. Always close, always laughing, always positioned just far enough from public scrutiny to believe they were invisible. They weren't being careful because they assumed I was either too consumed with work or too naive to notice what was happening. They were wrong on both counts. Rachel's comprehensive report didn't surprise me. It simply attached specific dates, precise times, and high-resolution evidence to what my instincts had already confirmed. She walked me through the documentation systematically. Vanessa had been involved with Blake Morrison for approximately 6 months. They'd first connected at a cocktail reception and marketing conference in Chicago. Cocktail receptions, panel discussions, late-night networking that extended well past professional boundaries. Within 2 weeks of that conference, they were meeting alone. Within a month, they were checking into hotels together.
According to Rachel's sources within Morrison's company, Blake was supposedly in the process of divorcing his second wife. The narrative he'd sold Vanessa was seductively simple. As soon as she freed herself from her controlling, workaholic husband, there would be a position waiting for her at his firm. A leadership role with an impressive title, substantial compensation, the complete lifestyle upgrade she'd been chasing. But men like Blake Morrison don't build empires by honoring promises to the people who believe them. They ascend by stepping on others and discarding them the moment someone more advantageous appears on the horizon. I read every page of Rachel's report. I examined every photograph, every receipt, every documented meeting. Then I closed the binder, secured it in my office safe, and drove home as if nothing in my world had fundamentally shifted. On the surface, life continued its established rhythms: dinners together, work events attended as a couple, polite small talk that meant nothing. Underneath that facade, I was systematically untangling my existence from hers. I opened new financial accounts that Vanessa had no way of discovering. I transferred non-marital assets to protected positions. I updated my will and beneficiary designations. I made copies of every important document: tax returns, property deeds, insurance policies, anything that might conveniently disappear once she realized what was happening. I had my attorney, David, review our prenuptial agreement line by line and walk me through every conceivable scenario. I wanted to understand exactly where I stood legally before making any moves. I even started quietly touring apartments, short-term furnished units with flexible lease terms. I eventually signed for one under an LLC that David had established, ensuring it wouldn't appear on any background check Vanessa might think to run. My plan was methodical and civilized. I would make it through her birthday celebration, maintain composure, then have a calm conversation the following day. No drama, no theatrics, just sit down at our kitchen table like adults and say the simple truth. I know everything. This marriage is over. Let's end it with whatever dignity we can preserve. Neat, controlled, private. Then she opened her mouth on that rooftop and announced to 50 people that my face didn't belong in her carefully composed picture. And in that crystalline moment of public humiliation, I realized she had forfeited any right to a discreet, dignified exit. She had transformed our marriage into public theater, so I decided the ending would play on that same stage. The morning after the party, I woke up on the leather couch in my office, still wearing yesterday's rumpled suit. My neck ached from the awkward angle. My clothes looked exactly like I'd slept in them because I had. My phone had become a monument to chaos. 73 missed calls, dozens of voicemails I had no intention of hearing, countless text messages. Most originated from Vanessa, others came from numbers I didn't recognize but could easily identify as her friends and allies. A handful arrived from her mother, a woman who had never concealed her opinion that her daughter had settled by marrying beneath her potential. I didn't listen to a single message or read a single text. Instead, I scrolled to David's contact and pressed call. He answered on the second ring. "Carter, I had a feeling I might hear from you today. It's time. I want to file for divorce, today if possible." "I anticipated this might be the week," he replied calmly, completely unsurprised. "The petition has been drafted and ready for weeks. I can finalize everything this morning. Do you want our office to handle service, or are you planning to deliver the news personally?" I'd thought about this moment for months, how it would feel, what I would want. Have her served at work, today, around 2 in the afternoon. Make sure her assistant or a coworker signs as witness to the delivery. There was a brief considering pause on the line. "You're certain that's how you want this to happen?" he asked. "She wanted an audience for everything else," I said evenly. "She can have one for this, too." "Understood. I'll have the process server at her office at 2 o'clock sharp." After we disconnected, I switched my phone to Do Not Disturb, took a long shower in the building's executive gym, and spent some time experimenting with who I might become without Vanessa defining my existence. I went through an intense workout, not thinking about anything beyond the burn in my muscles and the weight in my hands. Afterward, I walked to a barbershop I'd passed 100 times but never entered, and got a haircut that I chose myself. On the way back, I stopped at a clothier and purchased 3 new suits, my selections, my preferences, no one hovering with an iPhone comparing options to a mood board. Then I drove to the apartment I'd quietly secured 2 weeks earlier. A simple key code, a private elevator, a modest but clean space with neutral furniture and empty closets waiting to be filled. I hung my new suits carefully. I positioned my single suitcase in the bedroom. I stocked the refrigerator with basic provisions and placed a bottle of quality bourbon on the kitchen counter.
By 1:55 that afternoon, I was seated on my new couch, drink in hand, watching the clock on my wall with something approaching serenity. At 2:13, the anticipated flood began. I'd blocked Vanessa's number the night before, but other contacts started lighting up my screen with frantic urgency. Her coworkers, her friends, unknown numbers that were obviously allies reaching out on her behalf. You need to call her immediately. What the hell did you just do? Are you insane? Did you actually have her served at the office? I watched the messages accumulate in silence, responding to none of them. Around 6 that evening, Lauren's name appeared. I hesitated briefly, then answered. "Carter, what is going on?" she demanded without preamble. "Vanessa just received divorce papers at her desk in front of her entire team, in front of people she manages." "I filed this morning," said I simply. "There's no mystery here." "Because of what happened at the party?" Lauren pressed. "Because of what she said? She had been drinking. She was stressed about everything being perfect. She didn't mean it the way it came out." "This isn't about a single comment at a party," I said quietly. "That was just the final confirmation of everything else. Vanessa has been sleeping with Blake Morrison for 6 months. She was already planning her exit from our marriage. I simply executed mine first." Dead silence stretched across the connection. "How do you know about Blake?" Lauren managed finally. "Did she actually tell you?" "You knew," I said. It wasn't a question. "I suspected something was happening," Lauren admitted reluctantly. "She became different, secretive in ways she was never before, but I didn't know it was him specifically. I didn't want to detonate your marriage based on nothing but intuition and circumstantial observations." "I understand, but there's no ambiguity anymore. I have documentation, photographs, financial records, enough evidence to dismantle any narrative she might try to construct." "What happens now?" Lauren asked. "Exactly what's already happening. The marriage ends, I protect what belongs to me, and I move forward with my life." Lauren exhaled heavily. "You realize she's not going to accept this quietly. She's furious, she's humiliated, she's going to fight you on everything." "Then she can fight, but I'm not the one who abandoned our marriage first. I'm just the one acknowledging what she already destroyed." After we hung up, I poured another measure of bourbon and opened Rachel's complete report on my laptop. 200 pages of meticulous documentation. Dates and times and restaurant receipts and hotel records. Photographs of Vanessa and Blake at his loft, at establishments I'd never visited, in moments that left no room for innocent interpretation. Financial records showing Blake paying for Vanessa's salon appointments, her designer purchases, the new phone she guarded so protectively. And in a detail that struck me as almost poetically fitting, the invoice for Trevor, the photographer she'd hired to capture her perfect birthday celebration, the one who documented the moment she told me to remove my face from her frame. I'd paid for the rooftop venue, the bar tab, the catering, all the visible expenses of her party. Blake had quietly covered the cost of the person recording it all for posterity. I actually laughed at that revelation. It was simply too perfectly emblematic of everything our marriage had become.